The city outside was alive with noise, but inside the tall glass building everything was quiet. The billionaire sat alone in his office, high above the streets, staring at the world he owned. His name was Adrian Blackwood, a man people feared and respected. He had money, power, and influence. But even in his shining empire, there was a silence that never left his heart. He had built walls around himself. People came to him with smiles, but he could always see the hunger behind their eyes. Everyone wanted something: money, favors, power. He had learned long ago that no one came to him for who he really was. And so, his eyes became sharp, his voice cold, and his life empty. That evening, while the sun was sliding down the sky, the sound of soft footsteps broke the silence. Adrian looked up. The door opened, and a young woman entered the office carrying a tray of documents and tea. She was not one of his assistants. Her clothes were simple, and her presence was unusual in the world of glass, leather, and steel. She was the maid's daughter. Adrian had seen her once or twice in the mansion, always in the background, quiet and unseen. But here, in the heart of his empire, her presence was like a spark. Her eyes met his, not with fear, not with greed, but with a strange calm. "Sir, your tea," she said softly, placing the cup on the desk. Her voice was not shaky like the others. Most people trembled in front of Adrian. They rushed to please him, to impress him. But she simply did her task and looked at him as if he were not the great billionaire everyone spoke about, but just a man. Adrian studied her in silence. She did not lower her eyes. For a moment, something inside him shifted, something he could not name. He closed his eyes briefly, as if searching for clarity. When he opened them again, she was still standing there. "What is your name?" he asked, his voice low, curious. "Clara," she answered. No extra words, no explanation, no fear. "Clara," he repeated slowly, as if testing how it sounded. She nodded politely, ready to leave, but something about her calm made him speak again. "Do you know who I am?" Her lips curved in the smallest smile. "Everyone does, sir." "Then why do you not look afraid?" Adrian leaned back, his eyes sharp. "Most people cannot even meet my gaze." Clara paused, her hands folded in front of her. "Fear is for those who have something to lose," she said simply. "I do not." Her words struck him like lightning. No one had ever dared to speak to him like that, without trembling, without begging. He should have felt insulted. Instead, he felt unsettled. The billionaire closed his eyes again, longer this time. He wanted to see if this girl's true colors would appear when he wasn't looking directly at her. People always showed their masks when eyes were open. But when eyes were closed, sometimes truths revealed themselves. He listened to her breath, steady and calm, unlike the hurried, nervous breathing of others who entered this room. No greed in her silence. No fear. Just presence. When he opened his eyes, Clara was still there, waiting. "Do you like working here?" Adrian asked suddenly. She looked surprised for the first time, then answered honestly. "It is work. My mother cleans your mansion. I help when I can. Work is work, sir. We do not get to choose." Adrian tilted his head. Most people would have tried to impress him, to make him notice them, to ask for more. But Clara spoke with plain truth. She had no interest in dressing her life with false colors. He felt an ache in his chest, small but sharp. For years, he had lived surrounded by gold, lies, and shadows. And now, in front of him, stood a girl with nothing but her honesty, and it felt richer than everything he owned. "Do you judge me?" he asked quietly. Clara's eyes did not flinch. "It is not my place to judge. You live your life. I live mine." For a moment, silence filled the office. Adrian realized he was leaning forward, searching her face as if her words carried answers he had been running from. Finally, Clara bowed her head lightly. "Your tea will get cold, sir." With that, she turned and walked toward the door. Adrian watched her leave. The sound of the door closing echoed louder than it should have. He sat back in his chair, staring at the untouched cup of tea. He closed his eyes once more. For the first time in years, when he tried to see the world behind his eyelids, he did not see contracts, money, or shadows. He saw her face. Calm. Honest. Unshaken. And that unsettled him more than any enemy ever had. Somewhere deep inside, Adrian Blackwood, billionaire, master of empires, felt a whisper of something he thought had died long ago. Curiosity. And maybe, something even more dangerous. The next morning, Adrian Blackwood sat at the long dining table of his mansion. The silverware shone, the chandelier sparkled, and the servants moved quickly, careful not to disturb their master. Yet his mind was not on the food. It was on the girl who had walked into his office the day before, the maid's daughter, Clara. All night, her words echoed in his thoughts. Fear is for those who have something to lose. I do not. No one had ever spoken to him like that. No greed. No trembling. Only truth. And truth was something Adrian had not tasted in a very long time. But he was not a man who trusted easily. Too many masks, too many lies had surrounded him since he first built his empire. So a question kept circling in his mind: was Clara really different, or was this just another game? By the time the morning sun touched the tall windows, Adrian had made his decision. He would test her. Later that day, Clara entered the mansion kitchen, helping her mother with the laundry. She had tied her hair back, sleeves rolled up, working as she always did. The billionaire's shadow filled the doorway, and for a moment the whole room fell silent. The maids lowered their heads, afraid of his sudden presence. But Clara lifted her eyes calmly, as if she had expected him. Clara, Adrian said, his voice smooth yet commanding. Come with me. The other maids exchanged worried looks. Clara hesitated only for a second, then followed him without a word. He led her through the wide halls until they reached his private study. Sunlight poured across the shelves of books and the dark wood desk. Adrian turned, his sharp eyes watching her carefully. I want you to do something for me, he said slowly. Clara folded her hands, waiting. Adrian walked to a drawer and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside glittered a diamond necklace, bright and cold, worth more than her family could earn in a lifetime. He placed it on the desk between them. Take it, he said simply. Clara blinked. Why? No reason. Consider it a gift. His voice was calm, but his mind was sharp, watching every flicker of her face. He had offered gifts before: money, jewelry, power, and people always reached for them. Always. Clara's eyes lingered on the necklace for a moment. Then, slowly, she shook her head. I cannot. Cannot? Adrian repeated. Do you understand what this is worth? I do, she replied. But something that does not belong to me has no value in my hands. Adrian leaned back in his chair. For a second, silence filled the room. He studied her carefully. Most people would have taken it without thinking. Yet she refused, not with fear, but with certainty. Do you think you are too proud to accept it? His voice carried a challenge. Clara's expression remained calm. Pride has nothing to do with it. Some things, sir, are not meant to be given this way. Adrian's hand tapped the desk, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Interesting, he murmured. But the test was not over. That evening, Adrian hosted a private dinner with a few business partners. The dining room glowed with golden light, laughter, and chatter filling the air. The maids moved quietly, serving dishes. Clara, carrying a tray of glasses, passed near the table. One of the guests, a wealthy man with a proud face, stopped her. He smirked, his tone dripping with arrogance. Ah, the help. Tell me, girl, do you know how much this wine costs? More than you'll earn in 10 years, I imagine. The table erupted with laughter. Some tried to hide their amusement, others looked away. Clara froze, her hands steady, her eyes calm. Adrian watched silently, his gaze fixed on her. Clara lowered the tray slowly, then looked directly at the man. Her voice was quiet but clear. Respect does not have a price tag, sir. It is either given freely, or not at all. The room fell into a heavy silence. The guest blinked, his face stiff with shock. Adrian's lips curved into the smallest smile, though he hid it quickly. The girl had not raised her voice, had not shown anger, yet her words cut sharper than any blade. She picked up the tray again and continued her work as if nothing had happened. Adrian closed his eyes for a brief moment. Again, he wanted to see beyond the surface, beyond masks and shadows. And in the silence behind his eyelids, he felt it, her presence, steady and fearless, shining like a light in a room long dark. When the dinner ended and the guests left, Adrian remained seated at the head of the table. Clara passed by to collect the dishes, and for a moment their eyes met. "You spoke boldly tonight," Adrian said. Clara shrugged lightly. "I only spoke the truth. Do you know that men like him could crush you for such words?" She smiled faintly. "Men like him cannot crush what they cannot buy." Adrian stared at her, his chest tightening. Every answer she gave was like a mirror, reflecting back everything he had forgotten about life, about honesty, about strength that did not need money. As she walked away, Adrian leaned back in his chair. His test had not broken her. Instead, it had revealed something he had not expected. He whispered to himself, almost in disbelief, "If she is not after money, then what is she after?" And with that thought, a dangerous curiosity burned brighter in his heart. The mansion was quiet that night, but Adrian Blackwood could not sleep. He stood near the tall window in his study, staring at the city lights that stretched far into the horizon. His empire glittered below him, built on numbers, contracts, and endless power. Yet his thoughts were not on business. They were on Clara, the maid's daughter who had refused his necklace and silenced his guest with only a few calm words. He had tested her, and she had passed. But the question still haunted him: who was she really? People in his world always wore masks. They smiled while hiding their hunger. They bowed while sharpening knives behind their backs. Adrian had learned to close his eyes to see their true colors. When he did this with Clara, he saw no greed, no fear, only strength. But strength like hers did not come from nowhere. Strength was born from pain, from battles unseen. And he wanted to know what lay behind those calm eyes. The following morning, Adrian gave orders that surprised the mansion staff. Clara was to help with tasks in the main house instead of staying hidden in the servants' quarters. His assistants looked uneasy, whispering about the billionaire's sudden interest in the maid's daughter. But no one dared question him. Clara moved through the mansion quietly, helping her mother, carrying trays, arranging books in the library. Yet even in simple work, she stood out. She carried herself with dignity, her back straight, her eyes steady. She did not try to draw attention, but somehow Adrian found his gaze following her again and again. One afternoon, while passing through the garden, Adrian stopped. From a distance, he saw Clara sitting on the stone steps, helping a younger maid who had hurt her hand. Clara wrapped the girl's wound with a cloth, speaking softly, calming her tears. No one had told her to do it. She simply noticed, and she acted. Adrian watched, hidden behind the shadow of a column. His chest tightened. He had seen businessmen step over the weak, partners betray each other for profit, friends vanish when times turned dark. But here was a girl who had nothing, yet still gave what little she had: comfort, care, kindness. Later that week, whispers reached Adrian's ears. The staff spoke when they thought he could not hear. They talked about Clara's past. How she had worked small jobs since she was a child to help her mother. How other servants mocked her for being a maid's daughter, but she never lowered her head. And then Adrian heard something that made him pause. One maid whispered, "She could have gone to school, you know. She was clever. Her teachers begged her to stay. But her mother fell sick, and Clara left everything behind to take care of her." Adrian froze. He had spent his life surrounded by people who would sacrifice family for ambition, who would sell love for money. Yet here was a girl who had done the opposite, sacrificed her own future for her mother. That night, Adrian sat in the dark, his glass of wine untouched. He closed his eyes, searching again for her colors. And all he saw was a quiet flame, steady, unyielding, impossible to ignore. The next day, Adrian called Clara to his study once more. She entered calmly, her hands folded. You gave up your education, Adrian said suddenly, watching her closely. Clara looked surprised, then nodded. Yes. Why? My mother needed me, she replied simply. I could not leave her alone. You threw away your chance for a better life, Adrian pressed. Her eyes met his without fear. Sir, a life built on abandoning the people we love is not a better life. The words struck him harder than he expected. He leaned back, silent, while her calm voice filled the room. Books will wait for me, Clara continued. Dreams will wait too. But a mother's health, it will not. For a moment, Adrian did not know what to say. His world had always been about taking, climbing higher, pushing forward no matter who fell behind. But Clara's world was built on something he had almost forgotten existed: loyalty, sacrifice, love. He found himself speaking before he could stop. And what do you want now, Clara? She hesitated, then smiled faintly. Want? I do not have the luxury of wanting. I live. I work. That is enough. But her eyes betrayed something else, a hidden fire, a dream buried deep. Adrian saw it, just for a second, and it shook him. That evening, as Clara left his study, Adrian sat alone, restless. He closed his eyes again. He saw her face, strong and calm. But behind it, he glimpsed something more, a secret strength born from sacrifice, a dream she would never admit, a courage that made her shine brighter than anyone in his golden empire. And for the first time in years, Adrian Blackwood felt his carefully built walls beginning to crack. The secret of Clara's past was not just her sacrifice, it was the way she had turned pain into power, silence into dignity. And Adrian knew, with a sudden and dangerous certainty, that he was no longer just curious. He was captivated. The mansion sparkled with golden lights that evening. Adrian Blackwood was hosting one of his grand gatherings, a dinner where powerful men and women came dressed in silk and diamonds, speaking in polished voices, their smiles sharp as knives. For them, these events were a stage to show wealth, to whisper deals, to measure strength. Adrian sat at the head of the long table, his dark suit perfect, his expression calm and unreadable. But beneath the surface, his mind was not on the guests. His thoughts, once again, were on Clara. She moved quietly through the room, serving with her mother, her simple dress plain against the glittering gowns. Yet, without trying, she drew eyes. Not for beauty alone, but for something rarer. Dignity. A calmness that could not be bought. Adrian's gaze followed her often, though he pretended not to. He had seen her strength in private, but tonight the question pressed heavier on his mind: what would she do when the world judged her openly? The evening grew louder with laughter and wine. Wealthy voices filled the air, boasting of business victories and expensive tastes. Clara poured glasses silently, keeping her head low. But then it happened. One of the guests, a woman dressed in jewels, looked at Clara with a cruel smile. Tell me, girl, she said loudly, so others could hear, how does it feel to walk among riches you can never touch? Some chuckled. Another added, careful, her mother might sweep the floor too well, and the shine may blind us. Laughter erupted around the table. Clara froze. Her hand gripped the glass she carried, but her face remained steady. Adrian's eyes narrowed, watching closely. He could feel the heat in his chest, a silent rage rising. Yet he said nothing. Not yet. Everyone waited for Clara to shrink, to bow her head, to retreat like so many before her. But she did not. She set the glass down calmly and lifted her eyes to the jeweled woman. Her voice was soft, but it carried through the room. Riches without kindness, Clara said, shine less than dust. The laughter stopped. Silence fell heavy. Guests shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to react. Adrian leaned forward, his pulse quickening. Clara's gaze did not waver. We clean your halls, we serve your meals, we stand in the shadows. But shadows are only seen because there is light. And sometimes, madam, that light does not come from gold. The jeweled woman's smile vanished. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Around the table, eyes darted, whispers stirred. Some guests frowned, others hid small smiles, enjoying the rare moment when arrogance was pierced by truth. Adrian closed his eyes for a second, the way he always did when searching for what lay beneath the surface. And in that brief darkness, Clara's presence blazed brighter than all the chandeliers above their heads. When he opened his eyes, he knew it, this was no ordinary girl. This was someone who could break through walls he thought unshakable. The dinner continued awkwardly after that, the air heavy with unspoken tension. Clara moved on, carrying herself as if nothing had happened, as if her words were not echoing in every ear. But Adrian could not let it go. Later, when the last guest had left and silence returned to the mansion, he found Clara in the hall, helping her mother clear the tables. "Clara," he said, his voice low. She looked up, waiting. "You spoke boldly tonight." Clara set a plate down carefully before answering. "I only spoke what was true. Do you understand what you risked?" Adrian stepped closer, his eyes sharp but searching. "These people hold power. They could crush you for humiliating them." Her gaze was calm, unshaken. "Power is not in how much you can crush others, sir. It is in how much truth you can bear." Adrian felt something shift inside him, something he had fought against for years. She was not playing a game. She was not trying to impress him. Every word, every move, was raw honesty. He exhaled slowly. "You are not afraid of me. You are not afraid of them." "What are you afraid of, Clara?" She paused, her eyes softening for the first time. "Only of losing myself." The answer struck him like thunder. That night, Adrian walked alone through his mansion halls, the silence pressing heavy around him. For years, he had lived behind masks, building walls of steel and money. But tonight, those walls cracked again. Clara had made a move no one expected. She had stood against wealth and arrogance, not with anger, but with truth. In a room full of diamonds, her words had been the brightest light. Adrian stood by the tall window, staring at the city below. He closed his eyes one more time. And what he saw was dangerous, not shadows, not greed, not masks. He saw Clara, standing tall, unshaken, her strength more valuable than everything he owned. A whisper escaped his lips, "Why does she look richer than me?" And in that moment, Adrian Blackwood, master of empires, knew the most terrifying truth of all. He was beginning to need her. The days after the dinner felt different inside the mansion. Clara's words had left a mark. Some of the staff whispered about her bravery with quiet admiration, but many more whispered with envy and anger. She embarrassed the guests, one maid hissed in the kitchen. Because of her, the mistress of the house was furious. "She thinks she is better than us," another added, folding linens with sharp movements. "The billionaire only watches her now. The rest of us don't matter." Whispers turned to rumors, and rumors turned into poison. Clara felt the shift each time she entered a room, the sudden silence, the sideways glances, the mocking smiles. But she did not break. She carried trays, cleaned rooms, helped her mother, and spoke little. Her dignity remained intact, though the weight grew heavier each day. Adrian noticed. He noticed everything. From his office window, he saw her walking in the garden, her steps slower than usual. In the library, he saw her stacking books, her shoulders heavy though her head stayed high. He could feel the distance the others had created around her, the isolation pressing in. It stirred something in him that he could not name. Anger burned in his chest, a fire he had not felt in years. He wanted to strike down the whispers, silence the poison, protect her. But Adrian Blackwood was not a man who showed his heart. He had built his empire by hiding weakness, and he was afraid of what it would mean if the world saw this girl could move him. So he said nothing. He watched, silent, as the storm grew around her. The fall came one gray afternoon. Clara was carrying fresh linens through the hall when two servants blocked her path. Their voices were sharp, their words dripping with cruelty. "You think you're special because he speaks to you?" one sneered. "You're nothing. A maid's daughter, just like your mother." The other leaned closer, eyes flashing. "Go back to the shadows where you belong. Before you make enemies you cannot face." Clara stood still, her hands gripping the linens. For a moment, silence hung heavy. Then, calmly, she spoke. "Respect is not yours to give or take. It is mine to hold." They laughed cruelly and pushed past her, leaving the words echoing in the air. Adrian, hidden at the end of the hall, had seen everything. His fists tightened, rage flooding through him. He wanted to step out, to destroy the arrogance of his own staff, to shout that Clara was worth more than all of them. But he forced himself to remain in the shadows. His empire had taught him one thing: when you reveal what you protect, the world strikes harder. And he was not ready. Not yet. That evening, Clara stood at the gates of the mansion. A small bag rested on her shoulder, her face pale but steady. She had made her decision. Her mother begged her to stay, tears filling her eyes. "Clara, please, we need this work. We need this roof. Don't leave." But Clara shook her head. "I cannot live where truth is punished and lies are rewarded. I cannot stay in a place that tries to break my dignity." Her mother wept, but Clara's resolve did not falter. Adrian watched from the shadows of the high steps. His heart pounded as if each beat threatened to break through his chest. He had watched silently as the storm grew, and now it was stealing her away. For years, Adrian Blackwood had built an empire no one could shake. He had faced enemies, rivals, betrayals. But nothing terrified him more than the sight of Clara walking toward the gates, leaving his world behind. His eyes closed. And in the darkness, he saw it clearly, her colors burning brighter than ever. Not greed, not fear, not ambition. Strength. Truth. A fire that refused to die. When he opened his eyes, she was at the gate, her hand on the iron latch. "Clara," his voice thundered across the courtyard. She froze. Slowly, she turned. Adrian walked down the steps, each stride heavy, his eyes locked on her. The staff watched from windows and corners, shocked, whispering. "You would leave," Adrian said, his voice low but unshaken. Clara met his gaze. "Yes. Because if I stay, I lose myself." The words sliced through him. For the first time in years, Adrian felt powerless, not against enemies, not against the market, but against the truth of one girl. He stepped closer, his voice rough with something he could no longer hide. "And if I tell you not to go?" Clara's eyes softened but did not falter. "Then, sir, you will only prove that your empire is built on cages, not freedom." The courtyard was silent. The air was thick with suspense. Adrian's chest tightened. He had never begged. He had never pleaded. But now, watching her, he felt the weight of choice crushing him. Her next move would decide everything. The night air was heavy around the mansion gates. The staff stood hidden in the shadows, whispering, watching, waiting. None of them had ever seen Adrian Blackwood like this, standing in the open courtyard, facing a maid's daughter with urgency in his eyes. Clara stood tall, her small bag still on her shoulder, her hand resting on the iron gate. Her face was calm, but her heart beat fast. She knew this was the turning point. One step forward and she would leave everything behind. One step back and she would face the most dangerous choice of her life. "Clara," Adrian said again, his voice lower this time, almost rough. "Do not walk away." Her eyes met his, steady and unshaken. "If I stay, I lose myself." Her words cut sharper than any blade. For a long moment, Adrian said nothing. His whole life, people had bent to his will. They had feared his power, craved his wealth, begged for his favor. But Clara? Clara was ready to walk away from him without hesitation. He took a step closer, his voice trembling though he tried to control it. "I have everything: money, power, the world itself. Yet none of it matters when you stand at that gate. Do you understand what you are doing to me?" Clara's lips curved in the faintest smile. "You have always controlled others, sir. But love, true love, cannot be controlled." The word struck him like lightning. Love. He had never believed in it, never trusted it. To him, love had always been a mask for weakness, a trap for fools. Yet standing before Clara, Adrian realized he was already caught in it, and it terrified him. The staff gasped softly as Adrian reached out and placed his hand on the gate, stopping her from opening it. His dark eyes, usually cold, now burned with something raw. "Clara," he whispered, "tell me what you want. Not what you will accept. Not what life has forced you into. Tell me your true want." Clara's breath caught. For years, no one had asked her that. She had buried her dreams under duty, sacrifice, survival. Now, under his gaze, the truth broke free. "I want respect," she said firmly. "I want to live without being treated as less. I want to stand without fear. And I want love that does not come with chains." Her voice shook slightly at the last word, but her eyes stayed strong. Adrian closed his eyes. He saw again the colors that had haunted him from the start, not gold, not shadow, but fire. Clara's fire. And in that moment, the walls around his heart shattered. When he opened his eyes, his voice was different. Softer. Honest. "Then stay. Not as a servant. Not as someone beneath me. Stay as the one who finally taught me to see." Gasps rose from the staff. Adrian Blackwood, the untouchable billionaire, was lowering his walls for her. Clara looked at him, searching his face for lies, for masks. But all she saw was truth. Still, her dignity held her steady. "Words are easy, sir. Actions are harder." Adrian stepped back and lifted his voice so the entire courtyard could hear. "From this day, Clara is not the maid's daughter. She is under my protection, and no one, no guest, no servant will dare insult her again. If they do, they insult me." The whispers turned into stunned silence. The staff bowed their heads quickly, fear and awe mixing in their eyes. Clara's heart pounded. This was no longer a test. This was real. She dropped her small bag to the ground. Slowly, she stepped away from the gate and turned back toward him. "Then prove it," she said softly. Adrian's eyes softened. For the first time, the man who ruled an empire looked not like a master, but like a man vulnerable, shaken, yet alive. "I will," he promised. The mansion returned to quiet later that night, but inside Adrian's heart, nothing was quiet anymore. He walked alone through his study, the city lights glowing beyond the glass. His empire still stretched before him, unchanged. Yet everything inside him had shifted. For years, he had closed his eyes to see the true colors of those around him. Greed, fear, lies, always the same. But with Clara, he saw something different. He saw strength and sacrifice, courage and honesty, and a light that had burned through every shadow he carried. He poured himself a glass of wine but left it untouched. Instead, he stood by the window, whispering into the night. "You taught me to see, Clara. And now, for the first time, I see myself." Clara, in her small room with her mother, lay awake staring at the ceiling. Her bag was still unpacked, sitting in the corner. She thought of the gate, of the moment she almost walked away forever. Her heart was heavy with fear, but also light with something new, hope. She did not know what the future would bring. But she knew one thing: the billionaire had finally closed his eyes, not to escape, but to see the truth. And the truth was her.